The answers to what it looks like in 5 years' time aren't here now, but they will be just ahead of the change if you're paying attention and learning how to stay, kind of abreast of it all. And the other thing I would say is don't draw that line in the sand. Don't say, well, the answer is to
reject it all.
Our adoption of technology at this point here, like we might have capped our musical tastes at the 90s. Well, hey folks, and welcome to the podcast, and welcome to the podcast on its new home channel. So if you're joining us from over at the Rustic Spirits Homestead channel, where this podcast used to be, hey, welcome. And if you're brand new here, welcome as well. I suppose we should probably talk about why we've even moved the podcast in the first place.
It's been a couple of weeks since we've done a podcast too. There's been lots of behind the scenes things happening.
There has.
Why don't you explain to me, like you explained to me, because I am not 100% YouTube speak.
Yeah.
When we say the algorithm didn't like us.
Yeah, right.
Explain to me and to everybody why
Sure.
we've had to split this.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a game being on YouTube, and you kind of learn to play the game, and that's been part of our learning. I guess we talked about this on a video we put out last week as well, about the whole numbers and analytics and that side of thing. The short answer was we were always going to do a podcast. We knew we wanted to, and the reasons for doing it, and you can talk about that in a minute as well, but what we weren't prepared for was how it was going to kind of tank our channel a little bit. And because what we're building here is not just, or here, but also over on our main channel, is not just content for content's sake, we're building a business. And so when we notice something change, like the views, which we noticed within a few weeks of launching the podcast, we kind of evaluate that from a business perspective. And then you have to play that YouTube algorithm game a little bit. So we think...
So what does that mean?
Yeah,
to the people that don't understand how it works, they just know that they like if views, videos that they get.
If views didn't matter to us, and to some extent they don't, like we still fight to keep that authenticity, but they do a little bit. If they didn't matter, I wouldn't make a change. So
sure.
I think this is a guess, because a lot of it is you don't know how it works, but YouTube serves up our videos. Like, even if you're subscribed to our channel, you don't always get told. I mean, there is a little notification bell, so you can get a notification. Rustic Spirits has a new video.
Yeah.
Very few people actually do that.
I don't do that.
No, I think we've actually got quite a high rate, but statistically across all of YouTube, something like 90% of most views on a channel won't come from that channel's subscribers. And we've experienced similar.
That's close for us as well.
It is. It's more like 80%. So that's great. That means our subscribers are engaged, which is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. But what happened was, when we put out a podcast, again, just guessing, but educated guess, it was a different kind of content. It was an hour plus long versus, 20, 25 minutes. Not everybody's going to want to do that. It was you and I having a conversation. It wasn't lots of shots of pigs and gardens and, off-grid solar systems. Not everyone's interested in that. So the people that did watched it for longer, which was great. That helped in one sense. The algorithm was looking at that going, wow, people are really engaged. But the people that got served up the video that would normally get it served up, only a smaller percentage of them actually clicked on it in the first place.
Right.
And probably because they watched the first 10 seconds or looked at the thumbnail or saw that it was over an hour long and just went, not for me. That's fine, but then in response, what the algorithm does is it goes, you're schizophrenic. On the one hand, on Saturdays, you're putting out...
All these people want to watch this video,
this kind of content.
Video.
And then in the middle of the week, you're putting out this kind of content, and the algorithm can't quite figure out who your audience is. So that's the main reason. And I guess we saw it as an opportunity to go, well, we do kind of have two audiences. We've got this general interest kind of audience, which is great. That's awesome. And then we've got this real core kind of audience of people that are like, I want to learn more. I want to hear more. We're one experience that they're listening to. They identify with
the conversations that we're having,
But that's going to be a different set of an audience. It might be a subset of the broader audience. It might be different entirely. We don't know. But I guess what we're attempting now is to see, well, if we move the podcast over onto its own channel, let it develop into its own audience, will the main channel kind of recover?
Yeah.
Which is important to us because it's part of our income. Not going to
Not
lie.
only that, like there's a reason why we're making the kinds of videos that we're making, because we want to be helpful and useful and valuable.
Totally.
And if less people are seeing those videos, then we're less valuable. Like we're not as humans, but like what we're doing isn't having the same impact as it could be.
Yeah.
And I'm all about like make things as good as they could be. Optimize, optimize, optimize. And we talked about it. We said we'd give it 6 weeks of the podcast and see what kind of effect it had.
Yep.
Whether we liked it or not, whether it's something that we wanted to keep going, whether we want it to grow into not just us having conversations, but other people who are doing what we're doing as well.
Yeah.
And we both really came to the conclusion that we're not willing to let it go because we feel like it's a really big factor in keeping authentic, because the weekly videos over on the other channel, they're pretty polished. Like they're not polished, like they're real, don't get me wrong, but it's 20 minutes of a
style.
huge topic.
Yeah, totally.
And I just feel like there's so much that you can't say
course.
in that.
Yeah.
And so therefore it doesn't feel real enough to me.
Well, just look at how much footage gets left on the cutting room floor.
Absolutely.
Like this weekend's video, I think, is going to be like 15 minutes long, and there was 2.5 hours worth of footage that I had to sift through.
So this is kind of probably like where my heart lives in that honest conversations, real struggles, real wins, what's it really like?
Yeah. And I think we said on last weekend's video about all of this that, you know, YouTube isn't our main focus, but we understand that its place in our world. It's a billboard, it's a signpost to help people find what we're making, and then if they resonate with it, they can connect with it. Ultimately, though, our main purpose is to create a community.
Totally.
Is to build connections with people and be able to kind of encourage one another. And really, I think for us, we're focusing that on in an Australian context.
Yes.
And so that was starting to happen on the main channel, but at the same time, like every now and then, YouTube would push one of our videos out to an American audience and the comments would just completely change. So that while that's great and you get great views from it, I like the clarification process that happens through the podcast that really refines that audience down to who our people are, I suppose.
Definitely. So that's our commitment to the podcast.
Yeah.
Make sure you subscribe.
Yeah, that's right. If you're new here to this channel, so you might be subscribed over on the main channel, but you don't want to miss these ones, then find that notification. It's down there somewhere. You click subscribe and then click the bell, and then you'll actually get told when the episode comes out. But for reference, we're going to put these out on a Thursday morning. Yeah.
Yep.
Again, that's just a little learning thing. We tried Wednesdays. It seems like most people don't watch YouTube on a Wednesday.
I wonder how different that would be if we put it out on a Wednesday on a new channel.
Yeah.
There's so much like analysis that goes into this that can become quite addictive. And I love data. Don't get me wrong. Like that's my marketing.
Yeah.
That's my marketing girl coming out. But you can also get analysis paralysis. Totally. So at some point you have to go, my gut says this, let's go with this. Like the data says this, I think this, let's test it. So here we are.
Yeah, and the podcast is an opportunity to care even less about the data because it's just us being us, doing what we do, inviting people to, you know, kind of connect with that conversation. And then if it resonates with only a handful of people versus tens of thousands of people, I don't care because we'd do it anyway.
I love the interaction on these podcasts.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
Yep.
I know you would never say yes to this, but like, I would be happy to just do a podcast.
it might go that way, who knows? Just another little side note, we do have a Patreon community as well, which is kind of that even next step deeper community, and people can connect with us there over on Patreon. So we'll link to all of this stuff.
And we're still learning how to make that great as well. Like we're very much in the learning phase of all of this. It's
totally
quite new for us.
Brand new. Some of the feedback out of that community has been, this is awesome, guys, but how do we kind of make it a bit more two-way?
Yes.
We're definitely looking at that.
We're working on that.
The ways to do, we're limited technologically wise in that our internet connection out here is not super reliable. So
it's Starlink and it's great. Like I work remotely, we upload our videos, like that's all fine. But sometimes every 5
90
minutes.
seconds. Yeah.
It'll just pause for
Yep.
like,
Yep.
and I've learned to just, you know, and people who we FaceTime with and video chat with all the time, you just learn to just rest in the pause.
Yep.
And then you come back and you're like, oh, and now we're back. And it feels like that delay that you used to have when you're on the phone to like the other side of the world back in the 90s.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I'm like, you know what, it's fine. But that does make it problematic for live things.
So we're looking at that. So how we do that, whether or not it can be live, we have not attempted live streaming yet. That is something
We definitely want to do a live with our patrons. So.
Yeah, and that maybe that opportunity to have a chat back and, you know, somebody else just kind of, you know, hey, such and such
Have
is
a bit of
asking
a
about this or
fireside chat.
reckons.
Yeah.
I do love that idea.
Yes.
So I'm keen as to find a way technologically to do that,
Yep.
and I think there will be.
We'll work it out.
Yeah.
There's only so many hours in the day.
But that's all to come.
Yeah. Cool.
So-
So that's all of the backstory.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of weeks. What's been happening?
Yep. But we will be back to our regular scheduled broadcast weekly as of this one.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
You know what? I'm never, like, we're small enough that we can make adjustments if it's not quite working.
Yep.
Um,
Totally.
and it helps that the sun in the middle of the day isn't scorching, because
I know.
before we had to do it like in the morning.
I was just looking at the time because I always try to make sure we don't go, you know,
Yeah.
too short or too long on these. And I was like, are you serious? Is it 1 o'clock in the afternoon?
Is it really 1 o'clock?
It feels like
'Cause I've
this
been working all
sun
morning.
position. It feels like 10 at the latest.
Yeah.
which
We're
is
nearly
just
at solstice.
So weird. I said to JJ the other day, because he really wants grass growing in the front of his little cabin, and so he
It's not
planted
gonna
all this
happen.
lawn seed, and I'm just like, dude, the sun's just not getting to that spot, not for at least another 6 months. Anyway, we'll see.
So what's been happening?
Well, in truth, I want to be a little clickbaity with this with this episode.
Regan's always the clickbaity
I'm always
one.
kind of thinking that through. No, it's a topic I wanted to talk about anyway.
It's something that we have been talking a lot about.
Super relevant, and
Yeah.
it's everywhere at the moment.
Yeah.
And so the reason I kind of wanted to do this topic for this episode is it's like, well, this is the first, we've loaded all our historical episodes here, but this is the first episode we're publishing to this channel,
Mm-hmm.
not the old one. So I wanted to talk about AI.
It's a bit, it's a bit of a scary subject for me. I get scared.
Yeah, and I guess probably the first thing you think when I say that is, why? What's that got to do with homesteading? Like,
I think it has to do with the world that we're moving into.
yeah.
Definitely. So I think the way we wanted to approach this is you are the one who has always been tech forward in our
Family.
relationship.
Well, I was going to say family, but the
Not
kids
anymore.
are probably more. Now I call them for tech
Oh,
support.
watching you try and figure some technological things out. You're like, why isn't it working? I'm like, wow, you got old real quick. But you have always been the early adopter of our entire family, really.
Yeah.
And so you're watching very closely what's happening with AI. You were the first one to kind of get me involved in using it and understanding it. So we've been having a lot of conversations between ourselves, with our family and friends, about what AI means for us as a society, as a human race.
And
a lot of what you've been listening to has been about that as well. You've been
that's what I
sharing
mean.
that with our family.
everywhere, yeah.
So I guess that's why we wanted to have this conversation, because it is important to all of us. But we wanted to kind of say, what does it mean for this community of people who are a bit more skeptical of the world,
Yep.
who value and appreciate a little bit more disconnection from the way that the world works than others, some way more than others.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess it'll be me asking you questions,
For sure.
because you're the one that's full of information and I'm the one that's like, I don't know what this means for my life, but can I still just make my sourdough and plant my garden?
Yeah, but at the same time, you take it up as well. But I guess maybe I
Yeah.
do kind of sometimes, you know, run ahead into the unknown.
It
in the tech
overwhelms
world.
me.
Yeah.
There's so much, and I work in marketing, I work in a corporate job. AI is everywhere. But to me, it's taking so much of my time to learn how to make it meaningful
Right.
in my job, not just chat GPT. And I'm like, that just sounds the same as everybody else at the moment. And it's just noise.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't sit right with me at all. But now I feel like a dinosaur because I'm taking so much longer than other people because they're just like, just spit it out. It's just AI. And I'm like, that doesn't feel real or authentic or genuine or... So that's kind of the caveat and the context for this conversation.
Yeah.
Me always needing it to like make sense.
And you raised an interesting observation. Something that you looked into ages ago was our generation, and the name of our generation is Zennials, right? Although I think I might not quite be in it with you. No. I might be on the edge of it. But
what's that? Are you what?
I think I'm Gen X.
You're Gen X.
Yeah.
And I'm on that cusp of millennial.
Yeah.
Like what are we called? Elder millennials.
Oh gosh. Yeah, there's lots of names, isn't there? But
so you were born in 78, I was born in 82.
Yeah.
But really we both came of age. I think we got our first computer. I mean, I got my first computer when I was in grade 2.
In the 90s.
Dad used to be an early adopter as well.
Yeah.
In the 80s.
So did my dad. My dad
in the
computerised
80s,
his business before heaps of people were doing it.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that kind of, that family history of not being afraid of technology.
I still did all of my assignments with Encyclopedia Britannica though.
Yeah.
And I hope Mum and Dad still have them because...
Why?
Because they look pretty. Just the smell will be like...
Yeah.
The smell will take
Do
you
you
back
think
to
most
high
people
school.
bought Encyclopedia Britannica for how good it
I
looked
reckon
on
they
the
were
bookshelf?
door-to-door salesmen.
Pretty sure they were.
I'm pretty sure they were.
Yeah.
I remember when it went onto a CD.
Oh, yeah. What was that? In Carter. Do you remember? Gosh, I'm talking late 90s. So,
Yeah.
This was like early days of the home PC, and there was, a CD that came out with an encyclopedia on it. And I remember clicking on basketball, and then this little video would come up of, I don't know, Jordan making a dunk shot or something, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a video playing on my computer.
Yeah.
And I made that happen by clicking it. That seems like such a dinosaur thing to like talk
But
about now.
we were together, so it was 1998
Late 90s. Yeah.
when we got connected to the internet at home.
Yeah.
At my home.
Yep.
And we then had to learn how to embrace technology. And it was easier for us because we were younger. It was like just part of...
Yeah.
You just accept it, like, let's just get on this thing. This is exciting. But I think for our generation then, it made us able to embrace technology easier and faster than our parents and grandparents because it was part of our like formation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it, technology has existed for thousands of years. It just looked like different things, printing presses and wheels and, that sort of thing. But the embrace of digital technology and connectedness through technology was really a paradigm shift. And so there's this generation that we sit in the middle of. And it's interesting when you look at those middle generations. There's one after millennials as well, which is interesting. But ours in particular has this unique perspective on being connected to that generation that's a little bit more skeptical, hesitant, kind of cautious about technology and wants to maintain a connection to, some older ways of doing things and thinking, but also connected to that next generation that are excited about what's coming, embrace it really quickly and early. They're the generation that were raised in the in-between world of computers in schools. We started our schooling life without computers. We ended it writing our assignments on computers.
Yeah.
So we're really on that in-between. And that gives us this, I think, unique perspective into these two generations where, and actually if I look at our YouTube stats, that's a large part of our audience sits at our age, but then also either side of us. And I feel like maybe that gives us a unique perspective to talk about this topic.
Right. All of that to say, what do you think?
What does it mean? No, it's a fair question because I think we're now in this fuzzy space, and you were talking about it just before, of where, yeah, these tools and these systems exist, like ChatGPT, but they're obvious, you know, like these image generation tools and things where you can generate a photo that looks realistic, but if you look close enough, the mouth isn't quite right and the dude's got 6 fingers. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, can't do fingers, hey.
It's a few months ago that was true.
Yeah.
Now it's no longer true anymore. And that's probably what I wanted to say was, it's easy to be a little dismissive of this stuff, to kind of go, yeah, but it's crap. Like, I heard recently that a judge in America had to like hand out fines, like contempt of court or whatever they are, like fines in court, because some of the lawyers had been using ChatGPT to do case law research.
It's not accurate.
Well, it's really good at it, but one of the problems that AI chat systems like ChatGPT and Grok and all of those have is that when it can't find the information, in order to appease you,
It just makes it up.
it's called hallucinations.
Yeah.
So AI has these things called hallucinations, where it's really good at creating content that looks and feels genuinely authentic. It's one of the things that they're working on right now, and it's one of the measurements of how good an AI system is how few hallucinations it has, and that's getting better. But it just kind of goes to show we're in this space right now where it's obviously good at researching case law, but if you don't kind of fact check it, it's also too good.
Yeah.
So what I think is what I know is going to happen, these technologies are advancing rapidly, faster than most people actually even realize. To the point now where universities are building in systems for detecting automated text, like ChatGPT type text, and it works today, but it won't work tomorrow.
Sure.
Because it'll feel more and more human, because it'll fix the mistakes. And because there's a rise in all of these companies that are investing into AI, if you want to be the ones making the dollars, you have to have the best tool. And if everybody comes back to you and says the worst thing about chat LLMs, large language models they're called, is that they hallucinate, then if you're the company that develops one that doesn't, you make all the dollars, right? So that's what drives the technology to be better and better. But it's also driving the technology to be less and less discernible from human created content. So while we're in this space right now where it's kind of obvious, very soon we won't be.
Yeah.
And the rate of acceleration is massive. So ChatGPT is this ubiquitous word that some people even use to mean LLMs, but there's Claude, there's Grok, there's a half a dozen DeepSeek, the Chinese one. There's a half a dozen or more of these
AIs.
Yeah, but AI isn't just large language models. Like AI is also like all of these other tools
like
that are being...
Like that operator one that I saw the other day?
Yeah, yeah.
Holy moly.
They're being integrated into everyday technologies and equipment, and in some really exciting ways, but also in some really probably scary ways as well.
What does that all mean for people like us?
Homesteaders? Or this kind of general...
Because we've got to make it for our context, right? We've got to have this conversation in our context.
Yeah.
A lot of the AI conversations happening now are about the opportunity, the financial opportunity, the business opportunities, how easy it's going to make our lives. But I really want to make this contextual to...
Yeah, great.
What does it mean for those of us who want to live off grid, who want to be self-sufficient, who do still use technology? Like, what does it look like for us in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's important. 10 years is a massive time horizon.
I don't even think we can visualize what the world looks like.
Let's just look at between now and 2030, because that's what a lot of the reports that are coming out are being done over a 5-year timescale, because this stuff is changing. Like every week there's an announcement.
Right.
Every month or two there's a major development, and every year the landscape looks completely different. So they can only look at those short time horizons. I think you talked about this at the start. You said something about because we live in the world. And a really good way to think about that would be, imagine if you lived at the time when the automobile was invented, and you looked at that and said, yeah, but I don't have a horse and carriage business, so this doesn't affect me.
Right.
You know, even if you were completely disconnected from that, it changed the landscape so much that even if your business or your everyday life wasn't connected to, like financially connected to the horse disappeared.
Right.
I'm not saying horses went extinct, but how many
leisure,
do you personally know, and we live in a rural lifestyle, how many people do you personally know that use a horse for anything other than lifestyle? I would struggle to think that anybody can think of someone that they know that
Even
does.
Even a business, it's lifestyle focused.
So look at what's happened, and that's, you know, an extended period of time, but look at what's happened to a technology that if you didn't look at it right back then, you would go, well, that doesn't affect me, or that doesn't have any kind of direct bearing or implication.
But it does.
Because over time, it changes the world you live in to the point where it's like, well, it's way too expensive to keep horses, or it might not even be more...
All of the horse people said, yes, it's expensive to keep horses.
But back then it probably wasn't. You know, you rode into town. There was a place that you could stable your horse in town, have it fed, tie it up at the front of the, you know, business, ride it down the street without a permit. Like all of these things were commonplace.
Yeah. Now it's EV charging stations.
Yeah. Yeah. Right?
Wow. In how many years? 200?
So when
150?
when you look at the way that technology scales as well, like that whole like doubling every whatever it is year or whatever, that the time frames get shorter and shorter.
Right.
The technology develops over way shorter periods.
Okay, so we can't just ignore it. We can't just kind of go, oh well, that doesn't apply to me because I don't
we could
use that in my life.
This was going to be my point, right? You've often joked off-grid doesn't mean Amish, right? And one of the things that I marvel about with the Amish is that they picked this period in time that they kind of capped their technology at.
Sure.
You know, because how far back do you go?
Yeah.
You know, do you say the invention of textiles? Yeah, we're not going to do you know what I mean? So we only wear leather, you know, animal hides or what. So there's a point in time where they capped it. And, you know, you might look at that lifestyle and go, oh, it's so pure and it's so... But they allowed technology up to a certain point and then drew this arbitrary line.
Sure.
And I'll admit I don't know enough about it to know why they drew that line there. I guess the danger is that potentially that happens to us, to people in rural communities, in off-grid communities, is that we go, this point in time, before the development of AI and home robotics and all of that, was the best point in time. And we put that ceiling right there and we don't go any further than there. And you kind of have to go, you have to ask the question why, because like the Amish, the world kept developing around them.
It's like getting stuck in your era of music that you know, partied to.
Yeah.
And that's it.
P.S. the 90s was the best.
Yes.
But they now ride their horse and buggies on paved roads. And some of them even use mobile phones now. So there's kind of this thing that happens where the world develops around you, no matter where you kind of lock in your ideal, how the world should function and operate. And I guess what I'm saying is you can't just ignore it, but you do have to make a decision about how it's going to impact you, which is why I think it's important to understand it. Because how can you make an educated decision about whether or not you're going to ignore it, embrace it, or somewhere in between if you don't even know what it is?
True. I mean, I thought that we lived a pretty simple lifestyle, but my robot vacuum cleaner is my favourite appliance.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And, you know, there's not many people with a robot. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of people with a robot vacuum cleaner. There'd still be a lot of people that don't have one. There would even be this smaller group of people that say, I'm never going to get one.
Yeah, sure.
And that's fine. Maybe you just love vacuuming, but you kind of have to ask why. Like, do you have a vacuum?
Yeah, sure. That's a technology.
How come you don't just use a broom?
Why is that the line?
Why did you draw the line there?
I see. That's a really compelling
I'm just saying you're going to make the decision one way or another, it's going to be forced on you. You might as well know why you're making the decision.
Yeah, okay.
And so while I'm fascinated by and excited by technology, and I probably lean more into making the decision for embracing, I also recognise that that's a decision too. And I can't just say, well, because I'm that generation that's early adopters, we just do everything that comes out.
Okay, so you are excited by the development of AI. What are you cautious about?
Yeah.
What are you seeing in the research that you're doing that would affect people like us?
Brett,
or the community in general, but let's keep the context here.
Yeah, great. I think the first thing to realise is how quickly it's developing and how fast it's going to be foisted upon society in ways that we're not really prepared to handle.
Right.
It's both exciting and terrifying.
Sure.
In a recent podcast, it's the Diary of a CEO podcast.
Yeah.
He hosted a tech guy, I can't remember his name, an investor guy, Australian guy, I can't remember his name as well, and Brett Weinstein, who I like. And Brett's comment in that whole discussion was well worth listening to.
It was a very technical listen. I had to push through it, but I forced myself to.
Well, Brett kept bringing it back to kind of those societal impacts, and he's an evolutionary biologist, so he was looking at it from the development of the human species in terms of, you know, who we are, society and that sort of thing. His comment was, you know, and not said flippantly, this technological development is as impacting on the human species as written language was. You know, and I know in the past when technologies have come, people have said, oh, it's as important as the invention of the printing press, which was huge as well, because it enabled this distribution of...
like communication of written thought,
The invention of written language fundamentally changed our species. Someone like Brett, who's like, take him or leave him, but he's, you know, he's well regarded and researched. To look at that and make a statement like that, he's not saying that glibly. He's saying it's going to change who or what we are as a species, right? It's massive. You have to understand, like,
we're on the cusp of, like, the world looking completely different in 5 years, 3 years' time. A year's time.
Say the next 2 generations, 3 generations, you know, our grandchildren or great-grandchildren will look back at the way we live right now. Not even just the way we live, the way people live in suburbia and in cities and that right now, in the same way that we look back at medieval times or earlier. You know, it's that much of a paradigm shift. It's not just like, oh, they invented a new, you know, Bluetooth printer.
Do you think, so we're talking about what you're cautious about. Why is that a reason for caution for you?
Because
there's obvious reasons. Like, I don't want to just have the same conversation about AI that everybody's having. I don't want to be Captain Obvious.
I'm not talking about, you know, Terminator, Rise of the Machines kind of stuff. I think there's enough smart people that are paying attention and that are trying to put the brakes on it in ways that will... Some of the best minds are saying we've got about a 50-50 of that happening, which is horrible to think about, but let's not even talk about that. Let's say they figure that out and they solve for that problem. The biggest problem is, the immediate problem right now is the displacement of employment. So in workplaces right now, between last year and this year, the uptake of AI systems jumped from 50%. So last year, half of all workplaces were using AI in some meaningful way to 75%, and that's growing. The market valuation on AI as a technology, as in what people are putting their hard-earned dollars behind, is growing at like 35 to 40% a year. The money is going that way. The time and investment is going that way. It's you know, it's got this kind of propulsion behind it.
The momentum is pretty epic.
What we're not prepared for is how soon it will... Well, it's already happening. It's starting to displace jobs right now. And I think the concern should be, what's going to happen is, like when motor cars came in and people whose livelihoods were tied to the horse world had to reskill and upskill and move in an entirely different direction.
That happened over a long period of time.
There was time to respond, and probably for those people back there, maybe it felt like it was too quick, and maybe there were people going, stop, we need a pause on automotive development, like they're saying right now, we need a pause on AI development. But it is happening right now, and that's why I was saying those time horizons are so short, because I don't think that society as a whole understands how quickly whole industries are just going to be gone. Lawyers right now are getting in trouble for presenting case law that ChatGPT wrote, but if ChatGPT gets better at that, bye-bye lawyers. And that's not just a funny thing to say, but imagine right?
Sorry if you're a lawyer.
Back in the day, you studied for that. You might be lucky in that you had you would have had, say you'd gone into it, thank God you didn't, but you would have had...
That's what I started out my uni
You could have had this
career as,
illustrious career as a lawyer, but here you are now in your 40s and you would be looking at this going, time to change or retire early or become a homesteader or whatever. A generation right now that's going to university are trying to pick subjects to study that are going to be replaced by machines.
Education looks completely different.
Here's how quickly it's developing. We can't even predict the jobs and roles in society right now.
No.
Some of them are obvious. Lawyers will be obvious. Diagnostic technicians that look at medical scans. Why would I have one doctor look at my brain scan to see if I've got anything wrong with my brain when I can feed it into a system
that has all of the information
that's had every doctor ever? It's trained on every doctor ever. Look at it. I would rather that. It's the argument behind full self-driving cars, right? I know, like, there's probably a generation before us that goes, they catch fire and all of these sort of arguments. Fine. Every new technology has its hiccups, but again, where do you draw the line? The argument for full self-driving is, why would I put someone behind the wheel of a car who's been trained by one or two people when that car has the data and information on board that's been trained by millions of scenarios?
Yeah.
So while it doesn't look like it now that it has, it's clunky now, it's fuzzy now.
Every technology is.
Of course it is.
Yeah, right. That's just reasonable.
Like I marvel at the fact that we trained our kids how to drive, and we may be one of the last generations that ever teaches their kids how to drive.
That's mind-blowing.
Do you remember that scene from iRobot when the chief at that Will Smith movie, and he gets back to the base, and the chief is like, "You put your car in manual driving mode," and it's like this shock horror thing. How old was that movie? Maybe I don't want to know.
In the 90s?
I feel like it was
probably older than
close
you think.
to 20 years old, right?
Probably older than you think.
That's happening now. And I guess here's my concern, and to tie it all back.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario modelling is predicting that over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, the rate at which jobs become made redundant by technological systems.
So we're talking AI and robotics.
AI and robotics, which is already happening now.
Yeah.
A robot built your car probably. Yeah. A robot probably packed your Amazon order. Like, it's already happening right now.
Try really hard to not use Amazon.
It won't matter. These companies will embrace these technologies because they'll be far more efficient, far more cost effective, and that's how business works. So it'll be driven by capitalism.
Corporatism.
So it's coming anyway. The worst case scenario says that it's going to be about 1 in 3 jobs that are at any one point in time being made redundant by a system.
In how many years?
So it kind of tracks up. So over the next few years, and that doesn't directly relate to unemployment, because what will happen is the same as, the car replacing the horse, is people will see it coming and prepare, but not everyone will. And
be entrepreneurial about the opportunity that lies ahead.
Yeah, but not everyone will. That's the point. So the rate of unemployment will grow. One of the models I looked at said that by about 2032, so we're talking in about 7 years, the rate of unemployment could be as high as 9%. That's double what it is right now. The rate of jobs that will have been displaced by AI systems will be about 35%.
Wow.
And of all those jobs that have been displaced, only 50% of people who were in those jobs will have reskilled or shifted career.
Right.
Which means there's going to be a whole lot of floundering people.
Sure. It's going to look bad in the transition.
So I guess that's the two things that I probably wanted to focus on for this conversation is, yes, there's this transition period that's coming. It's faster than most people realize it's coming. It's on our doorstep. Like some are saying by 2030, that's only 5 years away. The world will look completely different. There will be a whole lot of displaced and floundering people.
There's no fighting it, is there?
There is.
No, in terms of like...
Oh, it's not happening.
No, it's going to happen.
Yeah. The other thing that's happening is there is this shift towards authenticity, real things, ancient skills, what happens if the power goes out, these sorts of questions. And there's actually a genuine shift to rural lifestyles.
Sure.
So last year, there was a 40% increase in people moving from urban residences to rural.
Yeah, right.
Part of that is because of cost of living. Part of that is because remote work has become more ubiquitous. But a large part of that will be because people go, it's time to get out of the cities.
The challenge with that is, especially here in Australia, rural communities, which make up most of the landmass, like really. I know most of our populations live on the coasts and in the cities, but the infrastructure and the care and attention given to the things that are needed for rural communities to grow isn't there.
Yeah.
The funds, the planning, even just the infrastructure, it's not there.
Yep.
So the challenge with that, it comes with its own set of challenges. Yeah, people are leaving the cities, woohoo, but you will be required to have a certain level of greater dependency on yourself and less of a dependency on the systems that the government provides because they're just not here. There's no public transport out here. You don't get to decide which service station you get your fuel from. When your town's got one servo, your town's got one servo.
Yeah.
And thankfully ours is a 24-hour one thanks to technology. But, you know, that the limitations of rural lifestyle are definitely there.
I guess that's why and I don't mean to be like an alarmist, but sounding the alarm is that what I see is that the discussions around it are either fear-mongering or exciting about this new technology without there being these genuine discussions about what the solutions are. And so if society in general aren't talking about this in appropriate ways, which is the world looks different 5 years from now, the world looks massively different 10 years from now, and 50 years from now, humanity as a species is somewhat unrecognizable to the previous generation. All of that kind of fear-mongering aspect of it aside, what are we to do when there's an influx of people moving out our way who are looking for answers and solutions, when there are massively amounts of displaced people who don't have an income and therefore a means to support themselves and their families just in their basic needs? I think what we will see in the short term is governments floundering as well, because governments are massive. And the problem with that is...
and they don't want to change.
Yeah, because they've got a system, it works for them, it keeps them in power and in charge or whatever, but it makes them incredibly slow to respond. And so while governments are focused right now on winning elections by talking about crap like climate change and immigration, which might be important topics, it's not the thing that's going to have affected the most people in the next 5 years.
Wow.
And so you're going to have all of these displaced people.
And no leadership.
Forget about leadership, no actual systems or means of looking after them. If you want to incite a recipe for anarchy and chaos, take away people's ability to eat.
Jeez.
And we saw that on minor scales in hiccups, you know, over the past with pandemic and all of that crap, and shelves being emptied of stupid things like toilet paper. But imagine the shop not having anything in it because the systems of money and the systems of supply.
But that's when crime increases, because people become desperate to provide what's basic for their families. That's another side of it as well. So, okay, that's the stuff that you're really cautious about. And,
concerned.
And I would say you're being quite measured today. With what you're saying. I feel that level of, what do we do? What are the opportunities now for us in order to be resilient and prepared and valuable in our communities for when this starts to play out? And it'll be like a frog in hot water, right? It's not like you know, all of a sudden the whole world flips on its head. It'll happen. It's already happening whether people like it or not. What then are the opportunities that people like us have in order to be resilient and valuable and live great lives in the future?
I would say in general, the first and best response you should have to this is educate yourself.
Sure.
Like just be, and try not to get on the fear-mongering bandwagon, because a lot of that is just, it sells clicks. And I'm trying to be really careful in this conversation that that's not what we're doing. But I have this genuine concern and this perspective on it, in that we've made a paradigm shift in the way we live our life right now that actually just kind of serendipitously aligns with this massive change in society and humanity and will just work out for us. But not everybody's going to want to be a homesteader, or not everybody has the opportunity to buy land. I think what's going to happen is that there will be pockets of communities that are able to provide some of the answers. And I guess what I see for the homesteading community is probably that opportunity to go, we've got some, a little bit like our generation has some connection to the past generation and some connection to the next. We've got, probably because we like to be slower, more mindful, meaningful, connected to some older ways of doing things so that we don't lose touch with how the world works, like the natural world. We may have answers in that regard. The simplest example of that would be growing your own food, right? When the shelves empty of food, or the systems of money and supply and all of that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe nothing happens to that at all, or maybe the government steps in and goes, the solution is we're taxing the AI companies, which has been one of the solutions that's been proposed. Is, well, how do we, all these people are going to be on welfare essentially. How do we fund them?
You don't have to. I think it's a pretty idealistic thing to think that the government is going to be on the forefront of this. I don't want to be a fearmonger, and I don't want to have my head in the clouds. I want to be realist about this.
Yeah.
The government is not going to be able to respond quick enough.
They won't do a good enough job.
No.
I think that's probably the thing we're saying, is eventually it will stabilise, right?
But we've seen that over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
The government will look out for us. Like, we grew up fundamentally like the government is looking out for you. They've got your best interests at heart. That is not true. And I don't think anybody would sit in front of me and say that the government has our best interests at heart.
Yeah.
From whatever sphere of life you come from, I think that's a pretty universal thing now. Like, I don't think that many people think, oh, I'll just trust what the government says because they'd never steer me wrong. There's too much information that we have access to now to undermine that thought process.
Yeah, and it's not even just the, oh, well, they're human, they get things wrong. It's oh, no, they actually intentionally sometimes do things that aren't in the best interest.
The systems are built
for the systems.
For the systems.
Not for the people.
That's right.
Yeah. So
what are our opportunities?
Not just our opportunities, but I think our obligations as well. Like, I think, that's what I was going to say, I think there will be these pockets of groups and communities that develop, that shine a little bit of a light in these, coming times. I don't want to say dark times. Like, again, I don't want to be a fearmonger, but I want to be a realist as well, to go, when massive shifts happen that upset the way the world works, not everybody responds appropriately. What we're going to be able to offer in our community, and let's talk specifically in our community of homesteading and kind of self-sufficient living, is a way to connect back to, technologies or systems or means of providing for yourself. That might not mean that everybody can, start a veggie garden because you're still living in an apartment, but all of a sudden your cost of living has got so out of hand that your food choices just got harder. But if you are connected to some of those communities that are like, we're going to grow more food because we see what's happening, and we're going to embrace this community, and then the broader community that are going to look to us for answers and go, I'll grow one extra sack of potatoes. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think,
or like that community contribution will start to develop, that they'll look after each other.
Because the danger that I see is that, and it's probably one of the appeals of the homesteading life, is to become a hermit and disconnected from society. But the reality is that's just not true.
Yeah.
You are connected to the world you live in.
Yeah.
I'll give you a really good analogy of that. Do you remember an M. Night Shyamalan movie called The Village?
Yes.
And
terrifying.
The story, it is until you figure out that the monsters were just the people.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, the movie's old enough now. I feel like we're allowed to spoil. Sorry if you haven't seen it. But what happens is someone, oh man, it's been a while since I've seen it. Somebody gets really injured or hurt and they need medicine. This village has been set up by these kind of wealthy people who they're done with society, with the violence, the crime, like everything. And they set up this sanctuary, and it's surrounded by thousands of acres of bushland. It has this massive fence. It's got these patrols that make sure that nobody can get in. They're paid for aircraft, like flight paths to never be allowed to fly over it and that sort of thing. And so this society has developed in this space where they're a bit like the Amish, like they're disconnected from but not just by intention. You're raised in that society to believe that that's the way the world works. But the elders, when they realised that there was this problem that they can't solve because they don't have antibiotics, they end up sending somebody back to that. So yeah, sorry, spoiler alert. They sent the blind girl to go so that she won't see the city, to go and find a doctor and bring back the medicine. And that story always resonated with me with this lifestyle. It's that, sure, you can do this pocket living of, I'm going to grow my own food, I'm going to make my own sourdough, I'm going to, but I still power my tiny home and I don't have an ability to mine lithium. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there are parts of your life that are connected back to the broader world that you live in. So why do I say that? Because the option in front of you is to go, I'm going to completely disconnect and become a total hermit. Great, find a cave and go and try and live in it without being connected. Don't drive on a public road.
Hope you don't get cold.
Yeah, hope you don't cut yourself and need antibiotics or whatever. That might be one. Or the other opportunity is to go, you know what, I'm part of a broader community and I can be a beacon here. You know, I still need to be connected. I've still got to get my off-grid batteries from somewhere. I've still got to order the spare parts from a tractor from somewhere. But at the same time, I can also provide solutions, you know, and I can also, because I'm lucky enough to live on a parcel of land that could support more than just me, I can start to think a bit more broadly and go, well, how would I, you know, and then the cynic in me goes, oh no, I've also seen the like apocalyptic movies where the hordes find out where your stash is, you know? And so you go, well, you know, what are we going to put razor wire around the property? And I think it's probably about finding that balance to go, there's a good portion of our friends and family and people that we're connected to that aren't living this lifestyle, but that if things got bad for them, we could, even if I'm not sending them food, which it might not come to that, I'm at least teaching them how to, you know.
Or you're there as a resource for them.
Yeah, or okay, the power went out in your apartment and you're totally freaked out and you don't know how to get water to your 20th floor apartment building because you need power to get water up that high. Here's a system that you could, you know, here's a way of thinking that you could put in place.
That you don't have to look up on the internet that you need power for.
But so I think what's going to happen is there already is this shift towards a rural lifestyle, because some for just lifestyle reasons, but some because people are nervous. And so there'll be an opportunity there to embrace people and go, yeah, we're here and this is what we've learned, you know, come along on the journey with us. There'll also be people who don't do that, who find themselves in a pickle, who we may be connected to, you know.
Do you think it's going to get to that point where displacement and...
So when I was saying those numbers before about worst case scenarios, you've got to remember that's a worst case scenario.
Yeah, right.
There are best case scenarios as well. It might be a bump in the road.
Sure.
It might be that better minds find the solutions to make this transition as meaningful and as the least impactful on your ability to provide for your family as possible.
That would be amazing.
I hope that's what happens. I think there will be enough people that shift their attention and focus to some of these problems that will be, to a large extent, what happens. But it won't be nothing.
Yeah.
What was your question?
Don't know. Oh, my head's like...
I guess I was going to say about that, yeah, that's the worst case scenario. And I'm not saying arm yourselves, the hordes are coming. But I am saying prepared for people to be anxious at the very least.
The level of anxiety in the world just trying to exist in pay bills and keep your head above water. It's there already.
Yeah.
I guess the temptation would be stick your head in the sand and hope for the best, right? Because that's really all you've got to do. Is that wise? Is that prudent? I'm not sure. I want to be realistic about this. We're having these conversations with our children. Like, what does it look like for you in the future?
Yeah.
Our children in their 18 to 21.
Yep.
You need to think about what your future looks like because it doesn't look the same as what ours did.
Yep.
And it might not be as easy as you think to continue to be a graphic designer for the rest of your life. Like, that's the conversation we had with Noah last night.
Yeah.
At least be realistic enough to have the thought, what does it look like for me in the next few years?
Or even if you
how do I shore myself up and my family up
to
be able to weather a change in society that's so significant? It's the same as when people learned how to write.
Yeah. And that's why I say I don't think you can be ready for what it looks like in 5 years' time because there's not many people who know exactly what it will look like in 5 years' time. But I think you can put yourself in the place of self-education. And one of the things I love about the homesteading community is that's a large part of the ethos of being a homesteader is I'm less reliant on somebody else knowing the skills, the information, because that, but encourage others to do that as well, because the answers to what it looks like in 5 years' time aren't here now, but they will be just ahead of the change if you're paying attention and learning how to stay, kind of abreast of it all. And the other thing I would say is don't draw that line in the sand. Don't say, well, the answer is to
reject it all.
Our adoption of technology at this point here, like we might have capped our musical tastes at the 90s.
Still the best era.
Yeah, but P.S. we also still like a lot of our kids' music as well. And I think that's probably the advice is educate yourself now, and not from a cynical point of view, but look at what's coming and go, well, what does that mean? Am I excited about that? Would I embrace that? I had a company reach out to me the other day. They wanted me to make a video about their robot lawnmower, which I said no to, and I say no to a lot.
Have you seen our lawn?
Well, that's why I said no to it. Well, I was tempted, but I don't do a lot of that stuff because a lot of times it's crap.
You like having toys to play with, though.
I do it sometimes if it's something that I was genuinely going to...
It's useful, helpful, you're willing to endorse.
And I actually believe it, right? And I said no to that. But on the other hand, I was like, there's lots of robot lawnmowers out there at the moment, and they work on these little postage stamp lawns that are like these nice squares and that, and the technology's getting better. This one was like an off-road one. It had these massive tires. It had like this roll cage thing on it.
What would it do if it struck a branch?
It was designed more and more for unique kind of lawns like this. That's today.
Yeah, right.
I can imagine there'll be a time in 5 years' time, maybe sooner, where it's like, you still push a lawnmower? You weirdo? What do you like mowing the lawn? And some people do. That's fine.
All of the guys do that have like these beautiful lawns.
I think that's the better question because some technology will become so available and so easy to use and so cheap that the only reason to do it the old-fashioned way might just be
the pure
enjoyment of it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting observation.
But some of the stuff that's coming is, so Elon, Tesla, they're working on a humanoid robot right now. If you haven't seen it, you've got your head in the sand. It's called Optimus.
You're so excited about it.
I'm super excited, and I will buy one. So maybe not next year.
Apparently we're getting a robot.
Because why wouldn't you? Like, to me, there's not too many, other than like, you watch some of those movies and it's like its eyes turn red. And like, I'm pretty sure that won't happen.
You're the one that called our Wi-Fi Skynet.
I did. I like to remain a little bit cynical. He's making it in such a way that it will be consumer affordable. So it might start out at $20,000 or something like that. But you don't balk at that when you buy a car. And how important is a car to your everyday life? If all of a sudden you've got this, and it's just a machine, right? It seems weird now because it's the stuff of science fiction. But go to San Francisco, LA, Florida now, where they've allowed full self-driving cars. And it's weird now to citizens who don't live in those cities to see cars that are driving themselves, driving passengers, acting like taxis and doing a better job of it than human drivers. But more and more cities are rolling out and it's becoming less and less weird. That humanoid robot here, oh my gosh, I've got so many projects that I can't get done.
What would you get it to do?
So, chop firewood. You know, like yesterday I spent a couple of hours chopping firewood. Literally, why wouldn't I? Right now I use a machine to chop firewood, right?
Sure.
I've still got to operate the machine.
You got me there.
So I'm not opposed to embracing technology or machines to do part of the chopping firewood thing for me. But imagine if I can go, hey, C-3PO, go make me a pile of firewood.
Is that what you would call it?
I'm going to now. Literally, I was thinking, what's a robot's name? What's a
3PO.
robot's name? The only robot I could think of was C-3PO
Rosie.
or Rosie from the Jetsons.
We already called the vacuum Rosa.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, the early adopters, you'll be like, oh, you weirdo, you've got a robot mowing your lawn or chopping your firewood or, I don't know.
Cleaning our solar panels.
Hundreds. Think of all of the jobs on a homestead that need doing.
No, what are the things that I don't like doing?
And
Fold my washing.
Now imagine if you had the disposable income enough to hire somebody as a farmhand or a property like maintenance person that lived on your property and just looked after themselves but did a lot of that mundane work for you. You wouldn't think twice about it, right?
Yeah.
But now imagine that a machine can do it for you.
Wow.
You think twice about it now because it's different, but you don't think twice about the robot vacuum cleaner cleaning our tiny home.
Does a better job than my children ever did.
So maybe you're not going to be the kind of person that embraces Optimus, you know, at least initially.
What you've done though is you've highlighted the fact that, and I think that's the takeaway from this whole conversation, is there's a line in the sand that you could draw if you wanted to, but it would be pretty hypocritical to go, oh, the robot is a no-go when I use a log splitter and an inverter to convert solar energy into stuff that can power my house and Wi-Fi and a laptop.
Yeah. You've made a choice.
It's all choices, even the lawnmower and the tractor and all of this technology. It's all technology. And I think for me, that's the takeaway is you can decide where your line is.
Yeah.
Or you can continue to mindfully go into the world and embrace what is ahead, but don't do it blindly. Don't do it hoping that it's all just going to work out. Like there's some realistic things that are going to happen over the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Don't just, open up and go, woohoo, let's go. Like approach it
I would
critically and thoughtfully and intentionally.
Yeah. Be like a lawyer today using ChatGPT. Don't just have it write your brief and submit that in court. Like, kind of... oh man, I was listening to this other podcast about this and they were saying that the military, it might be the US military, has this rule. I can't remember the name or the number of the rule. The name or the nickname for it is human in the loop. And so they have this rule when it comes to any technology that there always has to be a human in the loop, that the entire process can't be completed without some sort of human touch. That way you don't have Terminator robots pressing the big red button that launches the ICBMs.
It could still happen.
It could still happen.
If the humans don't do it first. Let's be honest.
Yep. So there's always the danger of that happening.
But there's always danger everywhere.
Yeah.
With the unknown and
so my thing would be embrace it optimistically, assuming that there are going to be better minds that are solving the larger problems, unless you want to get involved with that. But embrace it cautiously as well to go, I'm still going to keep a human in the loop. I'm still going to understand the technology. I'm not just going to have it, come and split my firewood without knowing for sure that it's not going to its eyes aren't going to turn red and it comes at me with the axe.
There's no guarantees on anything, though.
No, but there's no guarantees that you don't drive down the road and get hit by a semi. Like, that's...
It's all about perspective,
And so
isn't
what
it?
do? Do you give up cars, or do you be like the Melbourne people right now who are giving up machetes because of a machete attack? Like, that's the kind of stupid thinking. Exactly. It's not, machetes aren't the problem. Robots aren't the problem. AI isn't the problem.
Humans are. Which is why they're going to take over all of us.
Yeah. Maybe.
Oh,
Maybe.
But there's something that the opportunity that I see is for us to return to being available to embrace what it means to be human, to find joy in things that we love that might be different to you, but I really enjoy.
Yeah.
It's going to give us that opportunity to stop being cogs in a production wheel and to have our lives defined by how productive we are, how much money we're making.
Yeah.
It will give the opportunity to enjoy being human, not just a machine.
Yeah.
That's the way that I'm choosing to look at it. If I embrace this opportunity fully, and we're making those choices for ourselves anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue along this path and regain more and more of what it means for you to enjoy your one and big and beautiful life and make decisions towards that.
Do you remember that scene in, I'm going to do another movie analogy,
Oh,
in Back to the Future 3 when Doc gets really drunk in the saloon and the townspeople are asking him about the future, and like he's talking like a weirdo. He's talking about the future and
cars
and he talks about cars and like all these things. And the one kind of cowboy goes, "Does anybody run anymore?" And he goes, "Yeah, but sure, they run for fun." And he's like, "Run for fun?" That could be the reaction, to kind of go, "Oh, like we're going to look ahead to the next generation and go, you mow the lawn for fun."
You drive your car for fun.
What it kind of revealed, though, was that he came from this time where all of a sudden he had these greater freedoms afforded to him, where running could now be this only enjoyable experience, not running for my job or not running for my life or not running for any other reason than the pure enjoyment of running. Now think about some of the tasks and activities in your life that maybe feel like a chore, like cooking. Sure, Optimus could do the cooking for you, or you might still make a wood-fired pizza from scratch for fun. That's what I think technology always does, is that it creates greater freedoms. It has this destabilizing effect in the short term, and this one could be significant. But it also creates these greater freedoms for humans to embrace their humanity through different expressions of things that used to be a requirement for life.
I think, though, historically, humans haven't chosen the joy and the freedom. They've embraced the technology and it's further enslaved them. So need to produce more, need to be more, need to do more, need to earn more, need to have more, rather than us all getting to the point where we're like, what do I need to do to be fulfilled and then truly enjoy my life?
Yeah.
And I don't think we realize we have as much choice as we do.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Like the counter argument to that would be, look at society over a longer period of time. There are less deaths through childbirth. There is less hunger in the world. Like, you can find these anecdotal examples of how technology has potentially made things worse or enslaved us to itself. And that's probably partly true as well.
That's societal as well, though.
The fact that we work a 5-day, 38-hour work week these days, when the generation or two before us couldn't even imagine such a thing. Like, what? You get 2 days off? I guess that's probably, where you've got to look at it and go, it does change life probably for the better and for the better of humanity, but it's those navigating those changed times that make it feel like it's not going to be like that. I am hopeful about the future, and I, even as a homesteader, will continue to embrace technology, and that might be my particular personality. I'm doing it already right now. Like when I go to change the angle on my solar panels, I pull out ChatGPT and tell it what my latitude is, and then go, can you tell me what angle the solar panel should be on for this month? Do you remember when your teacher said it's not like you're going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket?
I'm just thinking this is the time that your teachers told you about, that you would need to use trigonometry in your everyday life.
Yeah, I don't.
You, not me. We wouldn't have power if it was up to me. I'm good at other things.
But they couldn't imagine a time where I could, to my watch, not even to my phone,
turn your fridge on, turn my oven on,
or go, hey, I need a calculation on this, or can you problem solve or spitball this idea with me? And you and I do that now
naturally
in our work life, in our home life, and that we've embraced some of that stuff, but cautiously.
Yep. And always critically.
Yeah. I think that probably the overarching message that maybe I wanted to put out there, and I hope it didn't come across as too, fear-mongering.
I didn't think it was enough.
Is that, well, maybe we'll talk about it again.
What was it?
Is this idea that we as homesteaders are uniquely positioned in our broader societal groups and connections to offer some solutions, to offer some perspective, even if it's not actual solutions like how to get water to your 20th floor apartment building, but even if it's just perspective. There are people in your world who do look to you and a lot of times go, you weirdo, why did you disconnect from the grid, or why did you do this, or why did you do that? But when times get uncertain and you live a lifestyle that feels more foundationally certain, yeah, you'll be uniquely positioned to at least be a voice of hope or reason.
Embrace it.
Yeah. On
that note,
that's about all I have to say about that.
I need to go take a shot of something.
Was that heavy for a first episode back?
No. I think these conversations are important, and if you just leave it up to everybody else, then I feel a burden of responsibility to have these conversations, to open these conversations. And I'd love to know what people think. I think the comment section is going to be really interesting on this one. Yeah,
tell us what you think. Hit us up in the comment section. What do you think about all of this? And how are you embracing kind of these future technologies, AI in particular, in your everyday life? On your homestead, if you're a homesteader.
I'm really keen to hear.
I'm kind of keen to hear what you think about the future and what the next few years is going to be like as well. Give us some other perspectives.
Yeah. Keep the conversation going.
Yeah, but until next week.
See you later.
See ya.